look at the profile of a perfect number 8. So a question for you, Futch. What is the difference between a number 4 and number 8? Looking at the similar qualities needed for 2 roles or different. So again, we've really sort of homed in on the 4. What would we expect now would be the difference for an 8 to be able to achieve?
I think, again, it's the manager and the coach, what they want out of a number 8. So you might want an 8, as we spoke about, hybrid, who can slide from a 4 to an 8, who gives you an energy and a press. Or you might have, I know Ted used it, a Frank Lampard. You might want goals from midfield. So you might want a number 8 who's going to arrive in the box, who can drive forward. But if you want that in your 8, you're probably going to have to swallow that out of possession. He's not going to be in structure and shape all the time. Because if you want you want goals, for example, then as we've said, the trade-off is, well, he's probably not going to be in the middle of the pitch next to your 4. So I think the difference is the ability, and like we spoke about, we'll just use Busquets as an example. He's a bit older, he's experienced, he plays that holding role. He probably now hasn't got the physical capabilities as he's a bit older to go as an 8, where I'd say, and go and be aggressive and go and lock on and go and press and really get in people's faces. He's probably is that holding midfield player. Whereas you look at Kante now, he can probably do both. Now, for me, he's got energy. He can go and press. His interception skills are fantastic, and he can use the ball well. So he's, again, what I classify as we're saying there, as a hybrid. So the difference is, for me, is having the physical capability, if you want, when we talk about out of possession, to actually slide on one and go and make advanced runs, or go and press probably a little bit more, and press a bit more aggressively, and go and really take the game to an opponent who maybe is getting in possession. So it's a slight tweak, but I think the physical profile of the players can dictate. And as we've said, if you've got a player who can do both, it makes a coach's life easier. But again, it always comes down to what you want from the player. So if you want your number 8 to be a number 4/8 hybrid, you're probably not going to get 15 goals out of him. So a Phillips, you're probably not going to get, if you play him as an 8, you're probably not going to get 15 goals. Where Frank Lampard, if you played him as an 8, you probably would. But you were sacrificing, the trade-off was Phillips is outstanding out of possession. Maybe Frank Lampard, because he was looking to get goals, not as effective. So again, the slight differences, but it's always down to, I think, a coach, what you want from the players, and what the expectancy you want from them.
Yeah, again, I flip it back to the England game. In the first game when we played 2 sitters, and Phillips played, and when he went and really, really pressed the life out of him, and he jumped from being deep into that high position, and he done it really, really effectively well. So for me, I identified him as an 8, not necessarily in the team to be a creator and a scorer, but in the team to go and press really, really high and get on Modric and their ball players. So again, there's different roles. It just depends what your team strategy is and how effective you want to use them. Whereas Lampard, if Lampard, say for instance, we played Mount, which obviously Mount did play, but if we play an additional Bellingham as a 2-prong 8s, then obviously you're going to get different returns. But for that game in particular, I'm not saying that the 2 of them couldn't have pressed high and won the ball back, but they were specifically going after, trying to break that midfield up, but having those players deep enough to still screen the players behind them.
And I think you want players as well who can go and do that out of possession, but still competent in possession. Because if you're going to win the ball, you want to win it in a mid block or high up. When you regain it, you want to retain it and you want to go and play. So I think the days of saying, well, he's just a winner, that's all he does, they're gone. It's go and win it, but you still be expected to be capable in possession to go and play as well. And I think that's the way the modern number 8's going. I think even Mason Mount, again, he for me could play as number 8. Be different to a Phillips. But again, I think he could still be effective in that role, but he's got different attributes and different skills.
Do you think, guys, sorry to interrupt you there, do you think that when changes are made in the game, we saw that yesterday, and certain players come onto the field, that also is a skill requirement, not just of the 4 and 8, but all players, to appreciate what's coming onto the pitch and how does that impact how I contribute to the team effort? Do I have to change slightly because of what's just come on, or do I just carry on doing the same things?
Yeah, certainly something to think about, Ted. The game, it depends on scoreline. Someone might have got tired, picked up an injury, and you've just got to go in there and perform the role that you're asked to do. Jordan Henderson seems to have come on a few occasions now. He brings something different. I'm seeing Jordan Henderson on the far side, attacking, linking up, getting crosses in. So there's a bit more required from him maybe than there would have been from Phillips and Rice. So I just think it depends on the individual and the abilities that they've got to impact the game. So just after that now, Ted, so when considering number 4 and number 8, how do you balance the profile and partnerships? Do you have similar players or different players playing in those roles?
The word similar is interesting. We have to agree that similar doesn't mean the same.
No.
That it definitely cannot be the same. We've mentioned several times now about the sort of basic ingredients and attributes that players both need. I think in terms of what Gareth's got at the moment, he's got the perfect blend with Rice and Phillips. Would they be everybody's first choice for central midfield? Maybe not, but he's done his homework obviously, and he's found that there's a decent marriage between the two, what they can and can't do, and in the games where they've been at it, if we can, there's one or two highlight games. I think they've, in terms of where we are in the tournament now, they've obviously been at it from the get-go, but they've been more prominent in certain games than others. And you just quoted some examples there about how Phillips was on Modric fairly quickly, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. So I think they both have very similar qualities in terms of that ability to transform from a 4 to an 8. They can share the pitch, if you like, take responsibility for one side and do their business there. I was thinking while you guys were talking, I was thinking about that. There are 3 numbers we're talking about here: a 4, an 8, and a 10. And if we're playing 4-4-2, you've got 4 positions. What combination of numbers do you use? Do you go with 2 4s and an 8? Do you go with a 4, 8, and a 10? Do you go with 2 8s and a 10? 4 and 2 10s? The combinations are not endless, but certainly that would be challenging. And I think if you just take time to write them down, you go, well, would this work? What would this look like if we had a 4, 8, and a 10? Who would be the perfect? The perfect 3, so to speak. It's difficult. I can only quote really what England have got as probably the most obvious example of balance between a 4 and an 8. Other teams, other countries have got their own combinations. But I also truly believe this, that at this level, almost any 3 midfield players, central midfield players who are recognised as being central midfield players, could go into those positions and make it work. Yeah.
I mean, I think it was evident last night, Ted, that you probably couldn't identify, if we're putting numbers on people's shirts, I know they wear different numbers now.
Yeah.
You wouldn't say, Rice was the 4 and Phillips was the 8.
No.
Because they were both jumping from deep positions to go and press high. So like you said, they kind of patrolled, one on the right, one on the left. I wouldn't say they rotated, but they just reacted off of certain situations. When if Rice went, Phillips would be the deeper one, and vice versa. So having the flexibility to do that takes a great understanding between a pair to complement each other. And I think obviously they've got that.
And I think the self-control they demonstrate is tremendous. Not just from a contact point of view, but also from positional sense and appreciating what the partner's doing. If Rice is doing this, then I need to be doing that, and vice versa, and understanding that straight away. It just seems like a marriage, perfect marriage almost between the two. And I'm thinking about, well, how long ago have they been practicing this partnership? And I think that it goes back a fair while when these two were identified as being the potential core of the team.
Yeah.
Sorry, it comes back to game understanding. Sorry, Wad, it comes back to game understanding, knowledge, and that bit of experience of playing together, Ted, doesn't it? Because it's like the more they've played together, if Rice is flying out to press, well, Phillips knows he's got to probably slide over and fill a gap he's left. And so one of them's always protecting. That's what I think the hybrid word's a great word, because you're balancing off each other. So at times they'll both be there, probably fixed as both 2 defensive midfield players, 2 4s. When one goes and presses, the other one balances off. And at times they might lock on together. And I think the more you play with a player, and the more the more you get to know someone, it's like you speak about central defenders. You look at, always say, oh, it's a great partnership. Partnerships take a little bit of time to build. And there's nothing better when you've got a partnership with someone, when you know exactly what they're going to do and where you go off it and vice versa. And that's quite powerful. And I think playing together as pairs, like they have done throughout the tournament, and obviously it's been building for a while now, they seem to have got better and better. And I think when you look at England's defensive record, as I said, of no goals from open play in the tournament, it's credit to the whole team. But, in these big games are often won and lost in that midfield area, and they've played every game and they've been in there and they've dominated. All right, at times, when they've had to shut down shot, they have done. But defensively, what they're in there to do, you cannot argue that they've not conceded a goal from open play, and that's a massive credit, I think, to those two in front of the back four.
Yeah.
All right, brilliant, guys. I'm just going to flip this on because I'm conscious of time. We're running out quite quickly now, so we're going to go on to some practice design visuals. And the first question, Ted's going to be to yourself, sir. How do we get players to do what we ask? And if we can pull up some slides, Rambo, and then obviously Ted can then talk around that. So over to you, Ted.
Yeah, thanks, Warren. I think the obviously we call this I stole this phrase from Aaron Danks. Sorry, brain to grass. How do you get your ideas about what you want to do onto a practice on the grass? And I think in this day and age where video evidence is out there in abundance, there's absolutely no excuse for us not being able to find live examples of what it is we're trying to do. So this is a live example. This is not necessarily directed at the 4 and 8, although we can highlight them in the work. But this is about the block and the square that goes in there of rigid dimensions. The point I was trying to make during the delivery of this practice was, can we, as a complete unit, think about our distances from back to front, so from our central defender up to our central striker, and then from side to side, from the widest player on the left to the widest player on the right. And we came up with, we also appreciated the fact that the shape within the box might look slightly irregular, but it's that shape for a reason. And we've looked at this, how the team collapsed into 3 lines. You can see the importance there of the 4 and 8. Sorry, I'll just go back to that. Looking at how the dimensions of our box, and we've not put any numbers on here because all pitches are different sizes. So we're using roughly half the width of the pitch is the width from side to side, and half the length of a quarter of the length of the pitch from back to front. If they were our sort of basic guidelines and we stuck within that, then we'd be in a fairly good shape. With our 4 and 8 positioned nicely in the centre of that as the fulcrum of that piece of work, that then allows us to take it onto the 2D diagram. And all I've done there is replicate exactly what we just saw in the video still onto this diagram with the players named in those positions. There was some pre-webinar talk about the human tactics board, which is a personal preference of mine and not something I'm necessarily insisting people use. It's certainly down to coach choice. I personally like it. It was first introduced to me years ago by Les Reed. I saw him doing a coach's seminar at Bisham Abbey, and I loved it. I loved the idea of it. It was so easy to manipulate. And in an academy environment or a club environment, if you introduce this and it becomes part of the common day-to-day circumstances, and you just say to people, we used to call it a mini shadow. If you say to the players, right, get a drink and jump into a mini shadow in the corner, they could go and do that without any guidance at all. And then you just drop in and make your coaching points there. And some points are reminders, some points are new things. Warren, you and I recently delivered on an A license where we use this human tactics board environment to try get some points across to players. In an A license environment, I think it's a critical piece for people to develop in their skill set.
Sorry, just linking back, Ted, to your moments in the game, and again, this is something for coaches. You think about practice design, and you go and view sessions and you say, oh, that session's really good, I'll nick that one. But if you just look at your game, if you've got access to footage of games, take moments out of a game, look at whether it's the mid-block, the 4 and the 8, they're getting played through constantly, and then just design sessions from that. I just think that we miss the trick sometimes. We try and sort of have this all singing and dancing practice, but just look at moments in the game, clip from the game, and work around that, because that's
absolutely. Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And it's one of my personal 5 golden rules of practice design. Find a live clip. Find a clip of your players. Unfortunately, in the job we're in at the moment, we rarely work with players on a constant basis, but we still find we've got plenty of library footage of stuff that we can link to the practice. And I think starting off with that piece adds credit and credence to what you're about to do, because you're saying, actually, what I'm about to do does happen in a game, and here's the evidence. So from there. Then you've got the problem of transferring from the human tactics board onto the field of play, which may need you to orchestrate and control and structure and constrain certain things. Again, to use Ben's phrase from before, there's a trade-off with that. We want to be as realistic as we can, but at the same time, we want the players we're working with to experience some success. So in the early part of the work, success might be the priority. So we'll constrain it and we'll restrict certain things. But all of those constraints and restrictions just represent a list of stuff that we gradually remove to tease us back towards reality. And then we end up in an 11v11 game. In this example here, my preference was for my holding midfield players to draw a hold, to the 2 centre backs and the holding midfield players to create, have a box. So even though we're attacking down the right hand side with our number 2 overlapping, we've gone from there. And this was working from a back 3, which is why the 4 is listed as a back 3 player. But the principle is someone's got to sit at home and guard the shop, and that. We mentioned right at the top of the webinar that predicting or expecting a what if, even though we're attacking, what if I need to be the first barrier to a counter attack? So the 4 or the 8 would sit in front of the 2 centre backs. Now, whether your preference was for a holding box or a holding triangle, that again is up to individual coach discretion. From my point of view, in this example, I wanted a box. So I was, although we were attacking down the right hand side, I highlighted the importance and congratulated the players on creating that box and to sort of underpin the value of halfway line security.
Okay,
almost there. I think this is the last one. We just then played 11v11. Now all the constraints are gone. We're trying to now to put into practice the stuff we've learned under control conditions. We've lifted all those controls and we just play 11v11. And the staff, however many staff there were, can't remember whether it was 2 or 3 of us, might be in the game, but flying on the shoulder. There's no stop, stand still now. It's talking on the shoulder. Or actually on the touchline, just observing it and then talk it through at the end.
Okay, cheers, Ted. And just a quick question for yourself, Futch, really. So how do I create a session to make players understand the mid-block? So we've put a session together, but the understanding of like certain areas of the pitch, when to jump, when to sit, triggers. So do you want to just sort of elaborate on that a little bit for us?
Yeah, I think Ted showed a great example there of some fantastic visuals of what it can look like at 11v11, but I think if you're going to do a mid-block practice, for me, it's got to have some direction to it, because players have got to know what they're protecting. And they've got to know when they win it, where they're attacking. So and it needs that element of transition. So I'm with you, Wals. I think you don't have to complicate it. Depending on your numbers and how you set it up, I'd stick to the pitch geography. So we'd link it to the area of the pitch that the players are going to be working in. Keep it directional and make sure it's got an element of transition. So, and when you're working on it, don't always have the players set. And for me, this is a big point. Don't always have the players in position, ready to be in a mid-block or ready to intercept. Almost try and play from a transition. So they have to recover into a mid-block shape, or they have to recover into a position. So they're kind of doing it, finding their own way. They're playing it more naturally rather than being set up everywhere. But that, just keep it simple. Keep it simple, directional, make sure there's some transition, and make sure the players aren't always set. And I think from there, you can build out from there, depending on numbers, depending on the ability of the players. But they're just a few kind of key, maybe, principles of your session, linking on to what Ted said, that kind of I'd go with.
That links nicely, Ben, to one of my other golden rules of practice design, and that is if the team you're going to coach, the theme is out of possession. So you want to coach it, then give them the ball to start with.
Yeah.
And vice versa, the other way around. If you want to coach them in possession, give the ball to the opposition first. So you create that environment where we're not in the state that we want to be in, the organised state we want to be in. We're in the opposite state at the moment. How do we go from one extreme to the other as quickly as possible in as controlled a way as possible?
Yeah.
Brilliant, guys. Listen, I'm obviously love to talk all night, but we've literally got a couple of minutes left now. So just linking back to our DNA and sort of summarising obviously what we spoke about. So we spoke about the 4 and 8 obviously predominantly, and linking into our principles of play. So if we talk about pressing when possible and not alone, if we talk about delay, if possible, to wait for support. So obviously we delay and to wait for support around us. If you're linking it to our cover and balance, positioning and distances are key. Our compactness, this is linked to our around not through strategy within England. So more time than not, we're looking to show you outside with an around not through. And if you're looking at control and restraint, is force the opposition where to go, where we want them to go, restrict their flow. This can help to set traps, obviously traps to go and win the ball back. So brilliant, guys. Really appreciate your convo, your input tonight. So thanks to Ted, thanks to Futch. Cheers for Rambo for bringing the slides on, and thanks for Katie in behind the scenes. Hope you all enjoyed it. It's always good to talk football, and come on England.